My name's Alex. I work with Global Action Plan, and I'd like to tell you today about our Erasmus Plus project that we've been working on. We're calling it Just Action, as you can see there. And yeah, it's been a little time in the pipeline. So yeah, I think I'd like to maybe talk to you a little bit about the process of, or our experience of the process of working on an Erasmus Plus project. Some of the challenges we've faced, how we've used design thinking really to boost and make those project results really effective. And then also we might think a little bit about some of the tools that we've used as well. So our project is, our organization is focused on climate action. We support, I might go back just for a second, we support individuals, communities, and that could be businesses or schools or community groups to take effective climate action. And we use global citizenship education as a key component, as a key approach really to sort of justifying the need for and kind of framing responses to climate change, local and abroad. And so I guess with this project, what we wanted to do was enhance our offering to schools. We already had a project called Action on Global Citizenship that was funded by Worldwide Global Schools, and that's supported secondary school teachers with resources and with training, CPD training and things like that. And so the idea with this Erasmus Plus project was to take that was already working quite well with secondary school teachers, and to expand it out to both a primary level and then also to share it with partners in our network in different countries as well. Since I mentioned partners, I'll start by talking about the partners. They are all in the Global Action Plan International Network. So we're already sort of existing in a network with them, but we kind of came together. They had identified a need for resources at primary and secondary schools in each of their countries that would help them sort of approach each of these. And so we kind of said that, well, since we have this existing program, let's expand it out using the Erasmus Plus funding, and let's localize it and translate and localize the materials and sort of expand them to Norway, there with Framtiden i våra händer, Global Action Plan Spain, and in Europa in Italy, and then that's us there as well. So what we're doing on the project is there's four, I guess they call them project results, 4 results. One of them, the first one focuses around the secondary school activities. That's kind of our existing program, but it didn't exist in Norway, Spain, or Italy. So they had to, so part of that was kind of adapting and developing the materials that we already had to their contexts and making sure that they were usable, that teachers could use these things to sort of approach global citizenship and climate action in their classes. We also developed entirely new resources at primary school level. So some of them were adaptations of things we had at secondary school already, but some of them were kind of completely new. And I'll tell you how we kind of came around to some of those in a minute. Then there's a teacher training resource as well. And this is the one that's kind of changed the most and as we've developed it. We kind of initially started out thinking this was going to be kind of either a taught teacher training course, or maybe it was sort of some in-depth teacher training. As we kind of use this design thinking process and kind of gauge teachers a little bit more, we figured out that something a little bit different was kind of required. But essentially we wanted to produce something that that built teachers' knowledge and skills in using GCE in their classrooms, even if they weren't global citizenship education, even if that wasn't their first comfort zone, I guess. And then the final project result we had was something that would host an online platform that would host all of the resources for secondary school and primary school, as well as the teacher training resources now. And that's kind of what we're mostly focused on developing at the second. So yeah, just a quick timeline. I don't want to go into too much, but there's a couple of things that I think are really important to notice. Is that we applied originally in September 2020, and that application was refused with some really constructive feedback from Erasmus that we were able to then incorporate and work on over the next 6 months or so, and then submit a new application in the next round of funding in 2021. And that was really useful. One of the things that they said was that we didn't have enough research to justify the need for our Erasmus Plus program. So even though we kind of instinctively, or at organizational level, we kind of felt that those things were there, when we reported to Erasmus, they didn't see that there was enough demand for the kind of things that we were that we wanted to produce. So we kind of went back in that 6 months in between the two applications and did a bit of research and kind of brought it in and said, okay, look, this is what teachers are lacking. This is what teachers have said that they want and want to see. So that research really helped us frame ourselves to the project, but also kind of justify the need for the project to Erasmus Plus as well. We kicked off the project in January 2022. Is that true? Yes, I think that is true. That's right. We started with a design thinking workshop. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Erasmus Plus projects, but some of the funding is for things around transnational project meetings. And that's more like opportunities to meet together and work on the project itself. So our kickoff meeting was a TPM, a transnational project meeting. We also had these things called LTTA, learning, teaching, training activities, I think. And those were opportunities for us as a project team to learn more about what's happening, and so to upskill ourselves. And so we ran at the very beginning of the project our first meeting and our first LTTA upskilling event side by side, and that LTTA was focused on equipping the team in all the different countries with the skills that we needed to apply design thinking to this big project that was coming up. We based on the back of the design thinking workshop, we said, okay, right, we need to do some user research. So that kind of took a good 6 months or so. And then there was a little bit of resource development and piloting after that. The second LTTA, the second opportunity for us to learn and grow together. Each partner organization in each different country had sort of a group of teachers that they've been working quite closely with. So that would be things around, that research of like asking questions and finding out, and sort of focus grouping or surveys. And then that piloting as well. We've been piloting quite closely with a select group of teachers who would take our activities and either give them feedback or use them hopefully, and then give us a little bit of feedback on them as well. So so we brought those select group of teachers together in Norway, and there was a lot of really, really rich discussion around the kind of things that they want to see, the kind of things that they use. And yeah, we came out of that having learned a lot, but with actually a lot more work to do on the back of that last April. So we're aiming for a launch in September 2023. And again, I think that's not going to be sort of the big launch, but this is going to be kind of somewhere between a launch and a wider pilot. We want to kind of move beyond the teachers, the select group of teachers that we've been piloting until now, and start to kind of work with wider schools for reasons that I'll go into in a second. And then the final 8 or 9 months of the project are kind of more about bringing it to scale and promoting it and sort of recording our impact. So I mentioned that we use design thinking in the project, and it's amazing. It's like how it has helped us, move from what we set down in the application to sort of different ideas and to approaching our project and our project results in different ways is really, really been useful. So I mentioned that we started off with our design thinking course that was facilitated by Claire Mulvaney in Thrive School. And I just really, I mean, she brought such richness to our team. It was kind of became a bit of a team building moment as well. There was opportunities for us to sort of learn by doing as well. So because we were doing this online, and it was a 2-day event, but we did it in like 4 separate like 3 or 4 hour slots. Just because that was sort of how the traveling was very difficult with COVID at the time. So we kind of decided, okay, we'll do it in this way online over a few different days. And that meant that we had the opportunity to kind of go away for a week and do some research and talk to teachers and say, okay, what do you think about this? So like during one of the workshops, maybe we'd kind of start to work out a questionnaire and the kind of ideas that we wanted to know from teachers. And then in between, we could go away to the teachers, ask them these questions, and they'd come back with actual data, which then in the next workshop, we could use this data to apply to the problem. So it was, as it was facilitated, it was so hands-on, it was so tailored to the project that we were working on, and it meant that we were actually already within the first few days like engaging with the real sort of realities of the the project results. It wasn't theoretical or anything, so that was really nice. Other ways that we use design thinking within this course, we kind of talked about those expert teachers, and that research was really around sort of what are they looking for when they're doing GCE? What are they missing? You know, what have they identified some needs that they're like, okay, that's not there. And then this idea of pain points we found really useful as well. So maybe they are doing are sort of doing global citizenship education really, you know, really well and really effectively within their own context. But how could they be a little bit more effective, or what troubles and problems do they encounter as they're trying to work through these topics? So I found that really interesting. We also had then we talked about getting those teachers to pilot it. They give us feedback through a Google form, and then we'd be able to sort of implement some of that feedback as well. And so that kind of happened over a 6-month period. And then that idea of Oslo, that kind of more of a co-design, right? We'd already kind of flagged some areas and places where we were going wrong, but it was just great to have people from different countries and different backgrounds, and such a wealth and breadth of experience was in that room at the time. And they could really kind of, you know, we were able to get some really strong feedback on our things because of how we set up those workshops in Oslo. So it was that was a very busy but fun weekend. I guess just I'd like to maybe share some of the insights that we arrived, like as I was asking those teachers about their pain points and the troubles. And here was something that we found really interesting. On the left, you've got kind of some of these, the design thinking often kind of encourages you to approach things through problem statements. So in the left, we kind of had these problem statements, and these problem statements then kind of give rise to how might we questions, how might we overcome these problems. So with our research, we found that a lot of teachers who are already using GCE, they want to collaborate together with colleagues, but maybe they're finding that the colleagues aren't motivated to do so. Maybe that's because they don't have the knowledge or the skills or something else, but just often teachers find that they're the one teacher in the school who's really using GCE, or who's really addressing climate themes in their classes. But that's a pain point for a lot of the teachers that identified that we talked to. And so our question to ourselves was, with our resources, with our project results, how might we overcome this gap? How can we support teachers to not, the expert teachers, let's say, how can we support them to kind of have other members of staff that they can collaborate with and work together on these themes, and specifically work together for kind of meaningful climate action within schools as well. And part of that, I think, also related, is that not every teacher sees how global themes, the kind of GCE themes, would necessarily address to their subject area. So we wanted to say, how can we show teachers that this actually, that it is kind of cross-cutting, and that it relates to lots of different topics as well. We also heard from teachers that they really wanted to do action. They wanted to have, they didn't want it to just be kind of theoretical and things that classroom work, but they wanted to get beyond, they wanted to have a meaningful impact on their school, or they wanted to connect the things that they were doing in their classrooms to, to show that things are actually happening in the community, and that you can be part of bigger initiatives as well. So we wanted to know, how can we overcome these barriers to build these kind of connections between classrooms and the wider world. And then there was a question around, how do we connect teachers wanted to also connect with other schools in Europe. And, as an Erasmus Plus project, that was something that we were uniquely positioned to do. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's 17 minutes past already and I'm only here. So I'll just very, very quickly then show you how our results came out, like based on these questions. And so this is a picture of one of our student journeys. We've got slightly different ones for primary and secondary, but essentially this was kind of from the collaboration with our teachers. This is how it kind of came out. On the platform at the end of the day, hopefully, technical issues aside, we've still got to navigate some technical questions, but the idea is that the teachers, when they log into the website, will be presented with this quite confusing, hopefully, map, but fortunately there's a training module to go alongside on how to use it. But the idea is that each of these, shouldn't actually click, each of these icons will link out to one of the activities that we've developed. We've kind of, we understood from a curriculum analysis, and then from the teachers' inputs as well, that that each of these areas are sort of relevant to the primary, this one's the primary curriculum. So that, that they're also all cross-cutting. They're not specifically focused on one subject, so they relate to a bunch of different subjects, but that, that sort of, you might have questions about air pollution. so then there's a lesson sort of specifically there, and this is kind of what the lessons look like. The idea of the journey was really important, moving from the center where classroom activities kind of further out to ways that teachers can collaborate with schools. The idea was, one of the teachers in Oslo said it to us, I would love to just be able to print off a project, hand it to my colleague, and then they'd be able to look at it and go, okay, let's do this. So we really tried to create things that were quite open, but also very supportive. And whether or not we've found that level, we'll find out next year as the pilot sort of gets bigger, I guess. But yeah, that kind of idea of moving from the center classroom, kind of the next layer out then is around things that you can do in school. And then that outer layer is kind of how can either our school go out into the community, or how can the community kind of come to our school? How can we build those connections to show that climate action is not just sort of something we learn about in the classroom? So that was our students' journey. We also kind of separately developed an idea around the teacher's journey, and this was Italy was leading on Project Result 3, the Italian partners, and they kind of came up with this idea of the it's based on the Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, where sort of the hero kind of sets out on a quest and then faces a bunch of trials and then kind of comes back and a renewed, transformed person, and transforms the world around them as well then. So I thought that was we thought that was an apt metaphor for describing how we wanted teachers to sort of develop their own skills and things as well. So yeah, just I suppose kind of a lot of the topics that we identified with the teachers could kind of come up in here. The idea is, I suppose, not that it's like a formal teacher training course where you do this first and then you do this and then you do this, but we tried to make it a lot more open-ended and a lot more kind of accessible, so that teachers can kind of dip into it at various different points. But then we've also tried to make it kind of with reflective tasks and with kind of on topics that are relevant to teachers. So maybe you might want us to go into that a little bit more. Time is running out very rapidly, so I'll just very quickly tell you about the project tools that we've been using. If I don't know, I see a couple of people who have been involved in Erasmus Plus projects here. I don't know if you had used something similar, but Admin Project we found was an absolute in some ways it's really a lifesaver. It's really good for coordinating a European project. Partners are all in different things. The tasks here, for example, you can set a task, tie it to one of your project results, and designate people that you want to work on this specific task. When they've done it, they can kind of check it off, and you kind of mark the progress there. So that's a really nice little thing. Some of these we use really well. The Gantt chart is really nice there. Files, you kind of use it as a repository for keeping files, although it's not the best for collaborative editing of say Word documents or whatever. So we've started using Google Docs for that. But generally, as a kind of as a project management tool, we found Admin Project really helpful and really useful. And I think I would generally recommend it. It's not without its problems, but I would generally recommend it for if you are starting a new European project. And then just in terms of collaboration, online whiteboards like Mural and Miro, each partner has a different favorite, but these have been completely invaluable for things like brainstorming, sharing ideas, planning, reflecting on things that we've done before. And yeah, then again, you can see just like the very messy planning process, but we were all able to kind of have our little inputs and things on that as well. So those tools have been really great. I'll just finish up by talking about some of the challenges and some of the learnings that we've taken away from it. So starting during the pandemic was not really great because, like I kind of had the idea that sort of this kickoff meeting is supposed to have everybody in the same place at the same time, and that would be amazing. And if we had everybody together for those design thinking workshops and the transnational project meetings, then we could have got a lot more done in terms of forward planning and in terms of sort of roles and designating and scoping and things like that. As it was all done online, so it wasn't really as useful or as effective. So yeah, if you're thinking of starting a new Erasmus Plus project, I would definitely recommend sort of trying to do it in person and traveling even for that, because just the online thing just didn't quite work as well for us as we would have liked. There was an interesting thing about skills distribution in that, like, I think looking at the profiles of each partner, like in Europe, the Italian partner are really accomplished in managing and applying for European Erasmus Plus projects. That is their comfort zone. I think Gap Ireland, we're very comfortable working with GCE, with schools and resource development. That's something that we have that skill set on board. Spain, kind of the Spanish partners are less kind of familiar with GCE, but might have more of a background in education for sustainable development, ESD. So kind of, you know, very related fields, but quite a little bit separate. And then so all of those meant that like we kind of had separate skills sets, but in the feedback from our original application, Erasmus Plus, or Lergas, our national agency, kind of hinted to us that they would like to see more of an even distribution of skills for like for everything. So rather than kind of one group focusing on the GCE, or like on resource development, and another group focusing on the website, say, and another group focusing on project management, they said that wouldn't it be better if everybody kind of contributed to everything? And in a way that was true, but then also, you know, if you're asking one of your partners to develop resources, then they don't necessarily have that background in developing GCE resources, then yeah, it can be a little bit difficult. So I found that, you know, like I went along with Erasmus Plus's it was with Lergas's suggestion at the beginning, but now I'm kind of looking back and I'm thinking, well, actually, you know, we knew where the skills were, and they didn't necessarily, they weren't as familiar as us. So, so thinking about that, and maybe kind of just holding your own ground, if you have an idea about how your project wants to work, maybe that might be, I don't know. Anyway, budgeting for travel abroad. Travel is funded. So if you're traveling from Ireland to Oslo, it is funded, but actually not, the people in Oslo don't necessarily have funding to welcome you and to put you up and to arrange accommodation and food and things. And so that was a challenge in figuring out how all that budgeting worked. And then just thinking about teachers' time was a real challenge as well, right? Like we wanted to bring everybody together, but people in different parts of Europe had holidays at different times and couldn't travel at different dates. And so that was a bit of a headache trying to figure out when it worked for everybody. I started doing learnings, but I got a little bit distracted. So I'll just wrap up by saying this user-centered design thing takes a lot of time, but you know, I didn't expect to come out with these kind of project results. That wasn't how I understood what we were going to do. But I think kind of, well, Claire kept coming back to this in the design thinking workshop, just trust the process. And as we did, you know, we've kind of come up with some really interesting things that I didn't expect us to develop, and discovered some interesting problems that teachers face when they're doing GC as well. I would definitely recommend, this is my first project managing this, and I think probably kind of this skill mapping is probably a fairly standard project management tool, but it was kind of passed me by a little bit. But I would definitely, if I was starting again, focus on mapping skills. And then if you are starting into something, research the topic. If you're applying to Erasmus or to the national agency for this, then do that research, use those findings to support what you're applying for. And then this can also sort of help you to understand the problems that you're looking into. You start the project with a little bit more information. So I'm going to stop there because I could probably keep going on, because I've been working on this project for about a year and a half. So I could probably keep going on talking about it. But I just wanted to present some of those things to, maybe that might be relevant or useful to you. So yeah, thank you so much.